Welcome to Holly's Pandorium, featuring your host, psychic medium Holly Jordan.
Hey everybody, we're back. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium, and I have a new guest with us today. This is Dani Rose. She comes to us not from very far away from me. She is in Astoria, Oregon, which is a beautiful city on the coast that I adore. It's wonderful. And she comes very highly recommended. And so I've never heard her stories, you guys. So we get to hear them all for the first time, which is amazing. So without further ado, welcome, Dani Rose, and thank you for coming on the podcast today. How are you?
Thank you, Holly. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm doing great. I hope you are too.
Yeah. So tell us how you first got introduced to the paranormal. How old were you and what was going on in your world at the time?
I feel like I have never been separated from the paranormal. Some of my first memories are of our house being haunted. I grew up in New Mexico, out in the country, and my parents had this brand new build home. So you wouldn't think it would be haunted, but it was quite haunted. And as a child, this was maybe in just starting elementary school. I would see shadows. At night, there was this particularly nasty kind of male presence that would kind of stand in the doorway and just kind of, glare at me angrily. And I told my family, I'm seeing these shadows, and at this time, which was the early '90s, we had this was kind of just the children's libraries in elementary schools. It was just the Wild West, like anything goes in children's libraries.
Right.
My library had books about the occult, satanic rituals, everything. This elementary school library had just this strangely complete occult library for children.
Wow.
Very graphic books about the occult. So I learned early on about ghosts and witchcraft. I loved these books. I would check them out every single week and just take them home for the whole school year. And so I was pretty well versed in ghosts by the time I was like in first grade. So I was telling my parents, I think I'm seeing ghosts in the house. And of course, they're like, no, you're not. You're not seeing ghosts. Like, ghosts aren't real. Like my dad says, to this day, he's like, ghosts aren't real, but also I'm scared of them. And I never want to encounter one. Right.
I love that.
So it was really scary to be in my childhood home. Even just during the daytime, there were certain parts of the house I didn't want to go into. And one interesting thing that I didn't sort of put together until I was maybe in my late 30s was this sort of angry apparition would stand at the bedroom door, but he didn't seem to be able to come in the door into the room. He didn't seem to be able to cross the threshold. And what I would also see in addition to the ghosts was these little creatures that would be on my bedroom floor. And they scared me as much as the ghosts because I didn't know what they were. They were just like these little guys, and they would just run around all night, all sort of shapes and sizes, just like having a big party on the floor. And it wasn't until many decades later I was like, oh, those were fairies. I just didn't know what I was looking at.
Right.
And they were protecting me from the nasty spirits. So I saw ghosts and fairies apparently. And so just to sort of bring it full circle, I now live in this historic home in Astoria, which was built around 1905. And it's haunted. There were many decades when I didn't see ghosts because my parents were like, no, ghosts don't exist. And I went to graduate school and got a PhD in a science field. And I was like, no, ghosts aren't real. Like, if you can't prove it scientifically, it's not real.
Right.
And then, of course, this happens. And now I can see ghosts again. So I see lots of ghosts in my house, and I'm just kind of like, whatever, just don't scare me. And also I do see little people in the house as well. This neighborhood for some reason has a lot of little people in it. So I'm back with the ghosts and the fairies.
Nice. That's awesome. So you have a very eclectic business in Astoria. Do you want to talk about that for a minute, and what all do you do there? Because I was trying to look at your schedule of stuff. You have so much stuff that you do.
Yeah.
It's kind of incredible. I mean, wow.
It's a lot. But so I'm the co-owner of Necessary Magic, which is a metaphysical store and community space. The co-owner and founder is named Dani Rose. And I hope you get a chance to talk to her, because she'll have a lot to say about how she founded the business and what her vision was for that. She has been selling herbal products, candles, runes at markets for several years. And I have lived many lifetimes, and I worked in the federal government for 10 years as an analyst. And I just got really fed up with working for the federal government, especially in the past couple years. My unit was dissolved, and I kind of was at a point last year when I didn't know what to do. I could kind of founder in federal government and try to find my way, or I could kind of live my dream, which was to open a metaphysical store. And it just so happened that I was walking by this building in downtown Astoria, and there was a Xerox sign in the window that was like, for lease. And the address is 333 10th Street.
Perfect.
And I kind of looked in the window. It is this pretty big space, 1,800 square feet. And it's got this sort of balcony overlooking a space in the front, and then these sort of hanging pendant antique lights. And I was like, oh, that seems like a really good spot for a metaphysical store, because it's near Commercial Street, which is the main downtown street. And so I went home and I crunched the numbers. No matter how I did the math, I just couldn't make the numbers work to make a profit off of the store that I would need to sustain myself. And so I kind of forgot about the idea. I was like, I got COVID. I was sort of down and out for a week or two. And I had spoken previously with the owner of the space, and he kind of just kept checking in on me, and he's like, hey, I think you should do this. I think I could see it working for you. Who knows why he was so committed to the idea. Mm-hmm. But he kept kind of poking me, and I was like, well, whatever, maybe I'll think about it. And I actually thought, I knew Annie. We had a sort of connection from back when we both lived in Portland, but we didn't know each other terribly well. But we had known each other about a year, and I knew that she wanted to start a brick and mortar store with her market booth. And so I approached her, not thinking that we would be doing something together. I just said, like, hey, I think you should have this space. It fits really well with your idea, which is to have a retail space, but then also have an area where she could continue making her items, her candles, her herb bundles on site. And so I kind of showed her the video I took of the space, and she was like, yeah, we should do it. And I was like, oh, we should? Like, me too?
Right.
So then from there we kind of worked it out, and I'm more of the general manager, although I do make some items for the store. I'm a Magdalene priestess, so I make and bless anointing oils, and I also do some work with some Mary icons. Not that I made this one. This is fabulous, but I make Mary icons and other things for the store, jewelry and stuff like that. But I oversee the numbers basically, and I also coordinate the events. And so, as you saw, we have a ton of events. We have a couple spaces. We have a balcony where we can have group meetings, but then also we have this sort of 20 by 10 workshop space, and we have converted that into a shared studio for artists. So we have about 3 or 4 artists at any time that rent a locker, and then they get to use the shared space and some shared tools, and just kind of use it as a maker space. But also, because I'm a Magdalene priestess, I kind of also created a red tent situation, if you're familiar with that term.
I am.
So I hung red velvet drapes all around the room. So they kind of, you pull out the drapes and they kind of mask the workshop, the perimeter of the workshop. And then it's sort of just transformed into this red tent where we can have circles, drumming circles, ritual circles, and just a magical transforming kind of space. And so Annie and I host our own events, but mostly it's people from the community that want to bring people together to do a bunch of things, talk about runes, talk about tarot, lead moon circles for the new moon and full moon, lead movement workshops and yoga classes. We also have workshops for more witchy topics like anointing oils and magical herbs. So it runs the whole gamut, but it's definitely a community effort.
That's great. I also saw that you actually have some grief opportunities for grief groups and such, and writing, which is amazing. I mean, to me, that's like a full circle of support.
Definitely.
Definitely. So can you talk or explain a little bit about your priestessness and how did that come about and what led you to that? And then as a sidebar, I have to ask really quick, have you ever heard of or read the book from Julia Ingram that's called The Lost Sisterhood?
No, I haven't. Tell me about that.
Okay, so for anyone, I've mentioned it a couple times on my podcast, but it's a fantastical story. And in a nutshell, she's a very well-known psychiatrist in Portland, Oregon. And through the course of dealing with one particular patient, she ended up doing some hypnosis with her. And through the hypnosis sessions, her voice started changing and she started talking about different lifetimes. And eventually the lifetimes led to the lifetime of a child. And this child says that she was Jesus's little sister.
Wow.
And there's a very exciting journey that comes out of that. But it talks about how she has blue angels and pink angels that teach her about healing animals and doing all kinds of things. And the story, as it leads and goes forward, she does a lot of interviews for 1.5 years all over the United States, talks to several people that have had these other lifetimes, and they connect her with someone who's reincarnated as the Apostle James, which was very enlightening and interesting. And they talked about a monastery that was all ran by women that did all the training through Mary. And that Jesus's mother actually taught him many of the things that he did in his lifetime. And then there was a tie to Tibet in it, but I don't want to give away too much, but it's called The Lost Sisterhood and the author is Julia Ingram, and I highly recommend it. even for people that don't believe anything that far out in the stratosphere of ideas, it's an incredible read. It's a small book, and she's a very credible person, and she has a very impeccable reputation, and her story is very, very in depth, but it's just fantastic. It explains a lot about the days that we're in right now, and it brings Mary in a completely different light than what the Bible has represented her as. And I kind of love that because I identify with her quite a bit. And so, yeah, so I love that. So I've never heard what you're describing as what you are. I have never heard of that before. So I would love to hear about how that came about.
Yeah, well, thanks for the book recommendation. I'm excited
Sure.
to check that out. So I'm a Magdalene priestess. I have so much to say about this. I'm very passionate about it. But my last name is Demer, which means of the sea. So I feel like I was always called to sort of be to work in this lineage, because this lineage of priestesshood is a water lineage. So some priestesses work with earth or fire or air, but we are a water lineage. So another name for the ocean is Mare, which is how you get the name Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary is not a name, actually. You read the Bible and you're like, well, why are there so many Marys?
Right.
Because
right.
Mary is a title for a priestess.
It's a term, yes.
It's a term. So you're right. So Mother Mary did teach Yeshua, her son, a lot of what he knew, because she was a priestess.
Right.
So I could talk about so much, but in a nutshell, we know that the Romans were threatened by Yeshua because he came from the line of David, which was a royal line. He threatened the Roman power in Jerusalem. So after the crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea took Mary Magdalene, who was Yeshua's, some say spouse, some say just a disciple, took her and Jesus' children, who might have also been her children, to France. And there, as the story goes, Mary Magdalene lived out the rest of her days in France and continued. She inherited Jesus' church. She inherited his church because she was his favorite disciple. The other disciples were angry about that because Jesus was giving her secret teachings, and Peter didn't like that so much. He wanted the church to go to him, but it went through Jesus' bloodline to France, and Mary Magdalene continued teaching there. People carried on her teachings. Eventually, the Cathars sort of embodied those teachings. The Cathars were wiped out in a massacre by Peter's church, which is the mainstream Christian tradition. So the Magdalene lineage has always been, it's called a mystery school because these teachings were passed down only to initiates, because obviously they went underground.
Right.
And the school I went to is called the Desert Rose Mystery School, and it's out of Spain, and it's very, very, very good. Definitely recommend that people check it out if they're at all interested in learning about Mary Magdalene. The teacher, Ana Otero, has lots of free videos on her website, anaotero.com, I think it is, but if you Google Ana Otero with one N, and there's just lots there. There's different, it's a body of knowledge. It's also a collection of traditions and rituals. Like, it's Friday today, so we keep the Shabbat on Friday because Friday is Freya's day. It's the day of the goddess, of divine feminine. So one of the characteristic, like the essential teachings of the Mary Magdalene lineage, is that there's a male god, but there's also a female god.
Right.
So there's divine masculine and divine feminine, and we are meant in our lifetimes, in our incarnations, to embody both the divine feminine and the divine masculine.
Right.
So when the Bible says, God made them male and female, it doesn't mean that God made men and women. It means he made each person male and female. And it's our learning process to balance those, which is the essence of all alchemy, is balancing your fire, your masculine, with your water, your feminine.
Right.
And out of the union of those, then you're really cooking, right?
Right. Sure. Yeah. I get that. Well, that's fascinating. I love that. There's definitely a feminine energy this year that is unprecedented, and I am very excited about that because we've been out of balance for a very, very long time. And there's another book that Julia helped to write with this gentleman that is a reincarnation of James. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the title, but it's I think it's listed in her cover. But it talks a lot about angels, and it talks a lot about what James did that was a little naughty in the Bible, and some of the licenses that he took with some of his authorship, and it kind of explains what happened, and in such a way that, whether you're a devout Christian or not, you can look at it kind of with a little eye-opening curiosity and go, really? It makes sense. It makes sense what he did, why he did it, and why things are so out of balance now. It just makes more sense. Yeah, but I don't want to get into that too far.
Oh no, that sounds very fascinating.
It is. But I'll try to find the other book too, and I'll send you a copy of the title so you can see it.
Oh,
but
awesome. It's
much bigger than the Lost Sisterhood, but it's very in depth. It's very in depth, and it's interesting. Lots of good stories. I want to talk a little bit about when you had, going backwards a little bit in our conversation, as a child growing up and having access to so much of the occult and so many of these ideas that maybe weren't, streamlined for the main media of knowledge. I cannot help but wonder, did your parents notice what you were reading? Were they agnostic? I mean, part of me is like, how did you do that? How did you, I was fortunate enough to have a mom that was receptive to the paranormal. So we talked about it in the house all the time, but she always cautioned me, never outside of the house. Don't ever. But I'm quite a bit older than you. So this was, 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago that this was happening. So how did that come about? I mean, were your parents non-religious and they didn't care what you were reading, or were they open-minded? And I mean, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a big part of my story and my healing journey, is that my parents were both very traumatized as children, alcoholic family system sort of issues. And so they were very unhealed raising me. And how that played out was almost paradoxical, because thankfully, I say, they weren't religious. So they weren't trying to impose any beliefs on me.
Okay.
But they were of this generation and set that really cared about appearances. So they, regardless of whether they saw themselves as Christians or not, they wanted us to appear like we were a good Christian family or something. So it's very strange that they didn't care about what was happening behind the facade. It was just very much like, we're going to appear a certain way. We're not going to be weird. I really don't think they cared about the witchcraft aspect or the occult aspect. They just didn't want me to stray from this image of this sort of quote unquote like right kind of American. And so they really didn't care what I was reading. as long as I wasn't outwardly, wearing black clothing or having piercings or, doing something that they saw as goth, which was sad because I was a closet goth.
Okay.
And yeah, so was a goth child inside and just not allowed to express that.
Yeah.
So it both was a very free environment in the household and also very restrictive.
Right.
And my parents just were trying to convince me, you're not seeing ghosts, you're not a witch, you're not anything weird. And it's not because they cared about it from the perspective of my soul and my salvation. They just didn't want the neighbors to think that there was weird stuff going on at home.
I love that.
Because
That's too
they,
funny.
they grew up, my mom is Hispanic and was from an upwardly mobile Hispanic family that really was trying to fit in with white culture in New Mexico and trying to prove how white they were.
Oh,
And
sure.
so it was like we have to be a certain way, or else we'll lose our social standing, which I don't know. I don't understand that because that's a very 50, 60 years ago sort of mindset. And
It is.
today it's like, well, if people don't like me, I'm going to move. And I've moved all around the country, living my various lives. And so it's very easy for me to just be who I am and kind of find my people. But for them who are less mobile and, dealing with alcoholism in their families, it was a different situation. So I definitely understand. But it did cause me trauma to live like that and
Sure.
have healed from that. Well, does healing ever end? No, but have done a lot of healing work on myself and
Right.
especially through getting my Reiki attunements and working with energy healing has been a big part of that.
That's amazing. And I have to say, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I definitely noticed things to do with alcoholic family traits. And what you're describing is picturesque. That is
Mhm.
definitely an alcoholic thing of
Okay.
what goes on here goes on nowhere else. We don't talk about it, we don't reflect it, and how you present yourself is all that matters because that's a direct mirror to what mom and dad are doing. And that
Mhm.
was very alcoholic.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
you say nothing, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors, it keeps between the family, blah blah blah. And that's definitely a 50s mindset anyway. You were never supposed to present yourself in anything outstanding or unusual because
Right.
that was naughty. Well, I'm very glad that they at least let you breathe and
Right.
let you stretch your wings a little bit and see what's out there. I mean, I grew up getting horoscope books and all kinds of things like that. And my one of my first uh, paranormal books that I checked out from the library was Hans Holzer on ghosts. Um, he's a very, very well-known author from the 60s, and he was one of the first people to do paranormal research. And he talked a lot about ghosts, and he talked a lot about the history of studying it and how old it really was.
Hmm.
And, even before the Tobin Spirit Guide that's referenced in Ghostbusters was mentioned. I mean, he's really at the forefront of it. He was a very, very educated man, and he did some incredible stuff, and it just blew me away. I thought, wow. But I appreciate too your initial comment about you were never really away from the paranormal, because I say that a lot on this podcast. I didn't, and I say it with reverence and respect, that I never had the option to deny the paranormal because it was always with me.
Mhm.
Always. I remember talking to ghosts when I was a toddler, when I
Oh
was 3 and
wow.
4 years old. I remember seeing them vividly. I remember the ones that would hide in my closet. I remember the ones that would greet me after school. and would talk to me. I remember the clothes they wore. I remember the things they said. And we had long talks. We would talk, but it was all mind speak. It wasn't like I had them speaking out loud to me. But I was not afraid of them. Sometimes they would show up a little spooky looking, and I learned much later, many, many years later, that a lot of times when a spirit is around a medium, they will present in the image that they look like when they died. And so when someone had been in a traumatic accident of some kind or had a traumatic death, when you're 4 years old and 5 years old and someone's face is disfigured, it's a little alarming. But my fear factor is pretty much dropped down to almost complete zero. I mean, there's not much that freaks me out anymore. I just don't. I've seen so much stuff. Forever and ever and ever. And it's like, nah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great that you've gotten to that point.
Yeah, it does. And I set some firm boundaries too. So I've learned psychic and spiritual protection levels that are much different than what I did when I was very young. And I took metaphysical classes when I was 16 and learned how to do remote viewing and all kinds of other things. So I'm very glad that you're having some classes, because people need to learn to manage things, especially when someone is profoundly psychic or a medium. It's really rough. I call it having a psychic teenage experience. A lot of people are going through what I call psychic puberty, and it can happen in your 40s. It can happen in your 60s. It can happen anytime it's going to happen. It'll happen. And it's rough. It's just as rough as biological puberty, in my opinion. There's a lot that comes across and you're like, what is that? How come I can smell things all of a sudden that aren't in the room? And what is that weird feeling I'm getting on my arm? And all the different vibes and the different views. And it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. When I was 13, I had some experiences that were terrifying. I lived in a little room outside my parents' house. It was a big graduation thing for me. I got to move to this apartment next to the garage. It was like being a grown-up. I was the youngest of 7 kids, and it was like the thing to get to move out of the house and live in the apartment, so to speak. It was just a bedroom with a bathroom next to the garage. Nothing really fancy. But I wasn't under my mother's unction then, and I didn't know it. And when I got into that space, wow, I couldn't take a shower with my eyes shut.
Wow.
I saw so much, and I had a bombardment of all kinds of energies that were like, woo, she's free game. We can get to her now. And and I ended up moving back in the house because I wasn't ready for it. I was not ready for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much protection my mom had on the house. Didn't even occur to me. Had no clue. Yeah. There were several nights I would just get up and go in the house and sit down, and she'd go, I thought you went to bed. And I went, yeah, well, I kind of wanted to hang out with you a little more. And it would go away. Whatever was hassling me would be like, hands off. As soon as I was near my mom, gone.
Yeah, that protection work is so important. And boundary work is so important. My particular psychic gift, we all have our different gifts, and my particular one is clairsentience, which so I get touched. I can feel other people's pain, physical pain, emotional pain, and this was a gift I didn't know I had because I didn't have any boundaries, and this all sort of culminated when I was in my early 30s, and I think it actually was maybe mid 30s. It was around right before COVID started that, I was just like a quote unquote like normal person working for the federal government in Washington, D.C., and not sort of on my spiritual path at all at this time. But I started having health problems that were inexplicable. I started having very sharp pains in my abdomen, sort of around in my lungs, around my heart. And I was going to different doctors and trying to figure out why are these pains? Why am I having these pains? And they were doing all sorts of tests and EKGs and X-rays, and couldn't find anything wrong with me to explain these pains. So I did something that I was out of my comfort zone, which is I went to see an energy intuitive. And in the Washington, D.C. area, you might be surprised to know there are lots and lots of psychics, because it's
That's
Washington,
surprising. I
D.C.
would not have guessed that at all. Wow.
Well, the thing there is that we have the Pentagon,
Oh,
and we have a lot of remote viewers that, we don't talk about.
sure.
But there's definitely a lot of psychic work being done in DC, and so there are lots of psychics. And so to see this energy intuitive, I didn't even know if I believed in psychics, but went to see her for 15 minutes, and that just sort of changed my whole life, because I walked in and I was like, I need to know what's going on with my health. And she explained to me that I had no boundaries around myself, and these pains that I was picking up are actually other people's pains. And I was like, that's possible? Like, how is that possible? And it really did fit my personality, because, you know, because of the whole alcoholic family system and all of that. It's like I was a people pleaser. And so
Yeah,
I was, and eldest daughter type, right?
sure.
So always trying to fix other people's problems and taking on other people's burdens, because, that's the way I thought people would like me.
Of course. The
And
constant approval seeking
approval
and
seeking.
desperate to make sure everybody's okay.
Mhm.
Everybody's gotta be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, classic alcoholic family system behavior. And everything that we experience in the physical world has an energetic correspondence. They're not disconnected.
Right.
Whatever's going on outside of you is also going on inside of you.
Correct.
So it made sense that I was taking on other people's physical pain,
Right.
and actually taking their pain from them, so that they're numbed, or they're not feeling their own
Right.
pain. I'm feeling the pain for them.
Right.
So so this intuitive, she basically wrote some notes on a piece of torn out notebook paper, and she was like, all right, just do these exercises every day. And I was like, okay. And I set the boundaries. If I felt a pain in my body, I would ask the pain, are you my pain? Yes or no. And then it would sort of intuitively tell me, like, yes, I'm not, I'm your pain. Or most of the time it was, no, I'm not your pain. And so I would say, repeat, like, okay, well then return to sender. And I'd send the pain on its way, back to the sender. And through doing those exercises and doing some energetic protection work, I was able to kind of clear my energetic field, release those attachments, and actually was able to start feeling my energy, my own energy. And this took many months.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This wasn't like a snap
It's
of the
not a quick
fingers.
thing. It is
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
And it's not quick because your body couldn't handle that. It would just be like getting struck by lightning or something.
Right.
So I did the healing work, started to feel my own energy, and then because I knew my own energy, then I was able to feel, okay, I'm walking into a room of this house, and I can feel that in the corner of this room there's a very heavy energy.
Right.
And that is, I can say, like, that's a spirit who's just unhappy, an unhappy spirit.
Right.
And so now I'm able to go in people's houses and help them basically communicate with spirits. I do it, of course, on a clairsentient level.
Mhm.
I think of myself as like a diplomat. where I'm
Yes.
I'm saying like, okay, the spirit over here wants to stay in this room and is
Sure.
mad, and they're mad that you're not giving them a little space to exist in this their
Sure.
favorite room. And so it's like I'm not trying to go kick spirits out of houses. I'm more
Right.
trying to help people live in harmony in their homes with spirits. And I do that here in my house too.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, this is a house that I share. One of the original builders or founders of the home lives here. Um, and I know that because I smell cigar smoke, and he used to own a cigar factory.
Oh, funny.
And
That's
so
great.
yeah, so that all that is just a long story of like what can happen if you do that energy work and get to know your own energy.
Right.
So much opens up. And I love this line in the Bible where Jesus says, those who have more will be given. And
Yes.
so the more healing you do, the more things come in, the more opportunities. And I I just feel that that's so true, that if you start on this path, the path just gets better and better. And
It does.
there's sort of no end to it, I think, but it's just a really beautiful experience.
I agree. And I can say I had similar experiences of not setting boundaries when I was younger. It took me years. And I remember in my 20s, someone would say, "Hey, there's a carnival in town, or there's a concert, or there's a this or that." And it was overwhelming. My empathetic vibe that I walked around with all the time. I had so much empathy for others. I was collecting as you were, and people felt better when they were around me. And it was because I was the sponge. I was picking up all the yuck that they were trying to filter around them or that was attached to them. I would suck in all this stuff, and then I would be sick as a dog. I'd be so ill. And I had to learn how to shield myself enough that I could help people, not limit my gifts, but actually it allowed me to expand them. And I think that's something that I think is important, and maybe I need to share that really quick. People have this idea that if they are shielding themselves, they're somehow diminishing or possibly deflecting information on a spiritual level or on a psychic level, and that is false. Putting shields around you is literally just a filter. It
Hmm.
actually, in reality, for me anyway, as a psychic, it allows me to have a much deeper and more articulate psychic experience because I am not distracted by other people's energies anymore. I am able to be around whatever energy is near me without taking it in.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have very clear audience. I have very clear connections with spirit and other energies, and I can be around people that are sick or that are hurting or sad, and I see it and feel it and know it, but I don't wear it. And it's a huge boon. It really helps. And you're right. Gifts expand and expand and expand. And it's almost like, when they talk about the different levels of femaleness and getting to the age of the crone, that's where I'm at. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I have gotten to be able to where I can help people so much easier than I could 40 years ago. And it feels very new, and it feels very refreshing to be able to go, "I know what that is, and this is what I did, and this is what happened," and it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And it's bigger than it ever was before. It's not diminished with age at all. And so I was excited about that personally.
Yeah, and in this lineage, in the Rose lineage, or the Magdalene lineage, it's this teaching that when we're women who are menstruating, that's we're cleansing the karma of the world.
Yeah,
So we take on the karma, and then once a month we are shedding that karma, and
right.
we're actually cleansing the energy of the world. So when you go through menopause, your energy is your own.
Yeah,
And so you get
finally.
to be in your full power. You're
Yep,
not, you're serving yourself fully,
right.
and your wisdom is coming in, in full form. And it's so important. I think, in our culture, we of course don't value the crone.
Right.
I love horror movies, and often
Her
the
was
crone,
depicted as so scary and so terrifying. I
right,
love it.
exactly. So the crone is like the villain,
Right. Always
especially,
the villain.
yeah,
Yep.
always the villain, especially in these recent horror movies. I'm blanking on the names, but some of the biggest horror movies of recent years have been The Crone, and the fear of her power
Oh, sure.
to manipulate, and also just like, her physical appearance is sort of the terrifying thing.
Oh,
And
sure. Oh, sure.
so I think part of this work of fixing the world and awakening the divine feminine is giving crones their rightful place.
Yeah.
Uh, crones really should be leading ritual. We should be learning from the wisdom of the wise women,
Right.
and that's an important part of the Rose lineage, the Magdalene way. Mary Magdalene lived to be a ripe old age, and and was passing on her teachings until she was, like 100 years old.
Nice.
And there's so much value. Women, crones, and babies,
Yeah.
the most valuable people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if somebody wanted to talk to you directly or to find out more about your classes, can you talk about how people can reach you? For people that are listening, I've been actually running a little ticker across the screen about her business and contact information, but would you mind spelling it out phonetically for people that are just listening so they can find out how to reach you?
Yeah, so for our metaphysical store and community space, that's necessarymagic.com. Let's see, NECESSARY magic. Some people spell necessary wrong, including myself.
I think we all have. It's like Mississippi. It's one of those words.
Right.
Where's the double letters and where isn't it? Yeah, I get it.
So you can visit our website, and we have some of our products there, as well as our events calendar. And you can contact me specifically at DaniRoseReiki.com, and let's see, DaniRoseReiki. I do a number of things. Reiki, obviously. I teach Reiki. I also do intuitive readings. And so, yeah, there's a number of ways that we can work together and and make magic.
So I want to hear about your Reiki classes. Tell me about those.
Yeah. So I teach Reiki about once a quarter. Usually have a cohort of people who work with me throughout the year. So we learn about Reiki and some of the practices. So Reiki is a universal life force energy, has been called, like prana or chi in other cultures.
Mhm.
And Reiki is the practice of channeling that life force energy into your own aura or other people's aura to basically enhance the effects of healing. And so we sort of learn the history of Reiki. Where did it come from? How did it get to America from Japan? And how do we safely access Reiki? One of the important things, like we talked about, is that we are not giving away our own energy when we do
Right.
energetic healing. So I think it's really crucial that people don't try to give energy healing without first getting attuned in Reiki, because you want to make sure that you're not giving away your own life force.
No,
Like
that's
my
wise.
husband one time, my husband tried to give me energy healing before he was attuned, and the next day he was completely wiped out. He's a very energetic person,
Is he? Oh,
and so it's just, that's how you make yourself ill.
Oh, sure.
And so we learn how to use our to draw in energy and channel it without giving away our own energy. And so I offer. I think it's great to have a live instructor with a hands-on practicum, because you can go on these internet courses and
Right.
get a certification, but I think it enhances your your depth of knowledge to work with a live instructor. So so I do about one a quarter, and I really enjoy teaching. I was a college professor for a couple of years, and I just always wanted to go back to teaching when I went
Sure.
into government. So this
Right.
is like I can sort of be a teacher in something I'm very passionate about.
I think that's great. I think that's great. So, where did you go from being curious about the occult to getting into Reiki? When did that happen? And what made you go, "Yeah, that's for me. I definitely wanna do that." When did that occur in your life?
Yeah, so once I went to the intuitive person who said like, "Oh, you need to set boundaries." Um, then I sort of learned about like, hey, there's this whole world I don't know anything about. I knew about
Right.
lots about the occult as a child, but then, my parents were like, you got to conform, you got to get a job, blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of just closed that door, didn't know
Right.
that there was this whole world of like energy healing and intuitive work. And so once I went to the energy intuitive, then I was like, hey, maybe I should try this Reiki thing, and went to a Reiki, a very prominent Reiki healer in the DC area, whose name is Alice Jones, and she gave me a Reiki treatment. She very correctly diagnosed a lot of things I didn't know were going on at the time. Like she diagnosed a misalignment in my hips about 5 years before I ever went to a doctor who told me that my hips were misaligned. So she put her hands over my hands as part of the her work, and she said I had a lot of energy coming out of my hands. And she asked, do you work with your hands? And I said, yes, because I'm a writer. I'm also an artist, and I do like crafting and all that stuff. And she said, well, you would be good with Reiki then, because it's about energy coming out of your hands, although it can come
Mhm.
out of lots of places. And I kind of sat with that, and COVID happened, and I was like, years go by, the paranormal experiences start kicking up, and um, crazy things are happening, and I'm like, maybe I will do that Reiki class. Um, one part of it was that I actually was walking through a cemetery in the DC area, which is they're like beautiful like parks basically,
Mhm.
and I got a visit all of a sudden from this huge energy, this huge force, who said that she was the goddess Hecate. And I was like,
Nice.
I don't know anything about Hecate.
Right.
I don't know who this she says she's Hecate. I'm like, "Okay, I think I've heard of you, like, in Macbeth or something."
Right.
And so she's like we're walking around the cemetery, she's telling me all this stuff,
Mhm.
about herself, which, I later verified by reading a little bit about Hecate.
Right.
But, she told me to get the Reiki certification. So I was like, "Well, I'm gonna listen to Hecate." Because she seems pretty powerful, and
Yep.
she said she had been watching over me since I was a child, which makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's kind of how I got into Alice's classes around
Right.
2022 or 2023 in there. And once I got attuned to Reiki, it's like my entire world changed. It kind of fell apart.
Mm.
Um, in in a way that's like it falls apart, the tower card moment, so that something is born out of that.
Right.
So, that's when I kind of had all these revelations like, oh, actually, I don't want to live in Washington, D.C., so I'm going to move across the country to Oregon and live by the ocean. And I'm going to open a metaphysical store and live my best childhood self and start doing
Big
energy healing.
changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you open yourself up to Reiki, it's like you get aligned with your highest timeline or your highest calling, and the world is going to shift around you to make
Yep.
that timeline possible. And that's definitely what happened to me. And the more attunements I got, the more things really fell into place with me for me. So I don't even remember what the question was, but
No, that's okay. I was just curious how you got to Reiki. Where did that pop in for you, and how
yeah.
that developed? You answered that. That's good. You did good. I know it's easy because I say the paranormal, and I talked about this with someone else recently too. The paranormal is such a small word to describe such a large subject matter that is so diverse and so full of interesting things, and we lump a lot of stuff into it that it's adjacent to normal, the paranormal. And the paranormal is my normal. That's part of my everyday life.
Mm-hmm. I
It
feel like
just is.
I feel like the paranormal, it's like the 3D physical life. I feel like that's the tiny part. And then everything happening around that's the real big piece. That's
Yes.
spirit, that's universe.
Well, and that's one of the things that I have found too, is the spirit world is so much bigger than ours. The spirit world is enormous and full of life and full of creatures and full of souls, all kinds of energy from all different sources, from plants to people. And it's incredible. It's so vibrant and so alive, very, very alive. I feel sometimes like just the curiosity for the paranormal is just a peak, when people just start to really get curious. And I think, just wait till you see what else is out there. Wait till you experience these other things. I interviewed a lady a few years ago that does Reiki, and she's had help from fairies. She's had help from a Sasquatch while she's in Reiki work. I've talked with people that in the South, it is not uncommon to see brownies and fairies when you're outside having a barbecue in the yard. They're just used to it. They fly by the people's heads, and it's not a Barbie. it's not a butterfly. it's something entirely different. People are like, oh yeah, that's just the brownies. Oh, that's just some fairies. Yeah. There's people that have seen Dogman and Bigfoot, and there's so much. There's just so much.
Yeah.
I saw a Bigfoot when I was 12 years old when we were camping in Northern California, and I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. I smelled it before I saw it, and it spoke to me in my mind as it go home, and not scary and not girly. I was very intimidated by it because it was massive and it had this very bizarre energy, but it was so powerful. It felt like its energy was going right through me, like radiation almost. I mean, it was full of life, had no ill intent towards me whatsoever. But that's apparently very common for Sasquatch in our area in the Pacific Northwest. If we were in Florida, it'd be a different situation altogether.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
How are they
swamp.
different?
Yeah, the swamp apes. They're very aggressive. They look different. They have different bodies. They have different hair, different colored hair. Their faces are different, and they are very prone to attack. They attack animals and people. They don't want to be around us at all. Sasquatch, by contrast, in this area. They go by tons of different names. If you go to Boring, Oregon, you can go to the Bigfoot Museum, and there's a giant display of all the Native American words for Bigfoot. It's got to be over 100. There's tons of names. And I honestly feel like, I don't know that there's 100 different types, but there's a lot of types. And they do different things. They literally do different things.
You know what's so interesting is that what I've found through this work is that you know, let's say men, the way that men talk about Sasquatch, it's with lots of fear. And they go on the Sasquatch hunting shows, and it's like, dealing with a wild animal. And what I've found is that what men are most scared of are the things that have treated me the best.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Spirits, and it's like culture, our mainstream culture wants you to grow up being afraid of these things.
Yes.
I always think you should approach everything with respect, but I don't think that, I don't think that Sasquatch wants to hurt children, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's just so interesting to me that it's almost the reality that I've experienced is almost completely opposite how our culture frames the paranormal. And like the crone, how the crone is framed, it's exactly the opposite. And how fairies and spirits are framed, it's those beings have been nothing but helpful to me.
So I have a theory about that.
Oh, tell me.
So I have long thought that part of the reason why they are presented in a fearful atmosphere is to give them space from us so they don't have to deal with us.
Mm.
And so it's more for their protection than for ours. Because if we're taught to be afraid of them, we don't approach them, we don't seek them out. We're afraid of what they might do to us. And actually, they're very afraid of us and what we do to them.
Yeah.
And so I've been studying things about fairies for a while now, and I have a lot of regard for fairies. A lot. And I believe that they are everywhere. They're everywhere. I believe that they are royalty. I believe that they came from another dimension and that they had to come here not by choice, but by necessity, and that they constantly help our environment, our animal life, and us. And they also need to be respected because they don't need us at all. Not at all. We're destroyers and consumers of life and the planet. And if you look at a human body, this was brought to my attention not too long ago, and it kind of blew me away. If you look at the body of a Sasquatch, they're covered in hair. They're very big. They're very muscular. They're very strong, but they are very stealthy, very quiet. It's not easy to find out where they live. They're very good at keeping to themselves, minding their own beeswax, as they say. But you don't find destruction from them, and you don't find consumption that disrupts environmentally at all. Our bodies, by contrast, burn in the sun. We don't have much hair on our bodies, by contrast, and we're very affected by the climate. We get sick every time the weather changes. There's all these things that make us more frail, almost as if we weren't intended to be here. We struggle. We're constantly, consuming every facet of this planet. And, the sun burns us and the wind knocks us over. And there's all these things about our bodies that are not very earth friendly in both ways, and how it affects us and how we affect it. So I find it fascinating that I think we're kind of the aliens in a way.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That's such
It's
a
a different take on it,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that the fears are wise because we need to leave the fairies alone. We need to leave Sasquatch alone. We don't need to get in their beeswax. They're doing their own thing and they're not hurting anybody. If we leave them alone, they're fine. When we invade, you really shouldn't be doing that. We've narrowed down the living space for Sasquatch just like the rest of the wild animals. It's not really a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got to find a way to live in balance with them and our natural resources. That's the challenge in the area of the divine feminine, is how do we live in balance with ourselves and
exactly. Definitely. Thank you so much for coming on today, Dani.
Thank you. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. I think we should talk some more, because I think the stuff that you're offering is very well needed, and you're not far away from where we are here in this area. And I'm curious though, have you thought about doing online classes? Have you ever done that?
I do offer online attendance for Reiki, because Reiki doesn't know any time or space difference. So Reiki you can do distance Reiki very easily. But I hadn't thought about the other classes online. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Because honestly, sometimes it's one of those things where, it might be somebody in New York, and the idea of taking a class out of Washington or Oregon sounds more woo-woo and more fun because it's far away. Just because it's far away, it's just different. It's somewhere else. And there's an aura about Washington and Oregon that I find very charming and cute. We're not California. We don't have the big, Hollywood stigma and the big, tech industry Bay Area boom thing going on. We're definitely more full of the woods and the oceans and the mountains. So there's definitely a more spiritual quality to our two states. And I'm noticing the response that people have to our area. And I think we're very blessed to be where we are. It's incredibly peaceful here by contrast to many other states. And so I think we're very fortunate to be where we are. I really do. It's kind of awesome.
Absolutely. It's a blessing.
Definitely. Well, I want to say thank you for coming today. For anyone that has stayed with us, thanks for watching. And as my dear friend Jay likes to say, please hit the like button and subscribe. There's other people that are curious about the paranormal, and that just helps them to find us. It only takes a half a second. I know you got your clicker nearby. Hit it. That would be a big help. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dani, again for coming today. And this is Holly from Holly's Pandorium saying, have a wonderful time. And I hope you enjoyed us. We'll see you again soon.